Welcome to Joe's Math Tools, where math is made easy. In today's session, we will be demonstrating 3 ways that you can calculate the percentage of a number. In this example, we're going to be calculating 72% of $130. Now for this first example, I'm going to be multiplying my numbers out first. And then every step that I have to do afterwards would follow. So that means the first thing we're going to do is change my 72% into its fraction form, which is 72 100ths, which will be multiplied to my $130. And remember, if you're not comfortable with multiplying a fraction times a whole number, remember that you can always change $130 into a fraction by simply writing 1 in its denominator. And remember that by adding this 1, you are in no way changing the value of your $130 because every whole number has a denominator of 1 even though it is not written. Now we're going to be multiplying our 72 times our 130. 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 3 will give us 6, 2 times 1 is 2, we're going to add in a 0 and then begin multiplying by our 7. So 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 3 will give us 21, put our 1, carry the 2, 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 will give us 9. Now we're going to sum our numbers together. 0 plus 0 is 0, 6 plus 0 will give us 6, 2 plus 1 is 3, and we're going to bring our 9 down. So we now have $9,360 all over 1 times 100, which will be 100. And now we're going to perform our division, which means that we will be dividing our 100 into 9,360. Now, 1 can divide into 9 since it's less than 100. So we're going to divide 1 into 93. And again, this is less than 100, so we're going to add a 0. And 100 divides into 936 9 times. So 9 times 100 will give us 900. 936 subtract 900 leaves us with 36. We're going to bring down our 0. 100 goes into 360 3 times. 3 times 100 will be 300. 360 subtract 300 leaves us with 60. We're going to now adding our decimal point in both our dividend and quotient. Add a 0. Bring down that 0, changing our 60 into 600. And 1 goes into 600 6 times. 6 times 100 is equal to 600. And 600 subtract 600 leaves us with 0. So when we calculate 72% of $130, we get $93.60. Okay, so this is our first method on changing, or rather calculating 72% of $130. And now we're going to take a look at a second method. In this method, I'm going to be performing my division first. Now remember, we just finished calculating this exact same question where we calculated 72% of $130. So now we're going to be using the same numbers and just using a different method to calculate our percentage of $130. So remembering again, 72% is equal to 72 100ths, and we're going to put in our 130, remembering that again, if you use this method and you want to add your 1 in the denominator, that's quite fine. Now for this step, I'm going to be dividing my 100 into my 72. And when I divide 100 into 72, I'm actually changing this number into its decimal form. So we're going to be changing 72% into its decimal form. And again, 1 can't go into 7, 100 can't divide into 7 because it's less than 100. 100 can't divide into 72 because 72 is less than 100. So at this point, we're going to add in our decimal points. Again, add a 0 and divide 100 into 720, which will go 7 times. 7 times 100 is 700. 720, subtract 700, leaves us with 20. We're going to add another 0, bring down that 0, changing 20 into 200. 100 goes into 200 2 times, and 2 times 100 is 200. 200 subtract 200 is 0. So as a decimal, 72% is equal to 0.72, which will be multiplied to 130. So we're now going to be multiplying 0.72 times 130, remembering that we can multiply either number, so either number can be at the top, whichever way you feel comfortable, remembering that multiplication is commutative, which means that it doesn't matter which numbers that we decide to multiply in what order. As long as our calculations are performed correctly, we will still arrive at the exact same answer. So 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 1 is 2. We're going to add in our 0 and then begin multiplying by our 7. 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 3 is 21, 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 will give us 9. And now we're adding 2 zeros since we already multiplied by our 1s and our 10s. And we're going to multiply now by the hundreds, remembering that everything multiplied to 0 will equal to 0. So I just included my 3 zeros for each of my digits that I will be multiplying by. Now let's perform our addition. So 0 plus zeros is 0, 6 plus zeros will be 6, 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 0 is 3, 9 plus 0 is 9, and 0 plus 0 is still 0. Now I want you to notice also in my multiplication with my decimal numbers that nowhere in my working in either of my lines that I included a decimal point. That's because when we are multiplying with decimal numbers, the only 2 places that our decimal point should be shown in our question is in the question that is given to us, which is up here, and in our answer, which we're going to include our decimal point now. So to include your decimal point, go back to the numbers that you originally multiplied and count how many digits are behind the decimal point. And in 130, there is no digits behind the decimal point. In 0.72, we have 2 digits behind the decimal point. So we're going to add these numbers. 0 plus 2 is 2, which means that in my answer, I should have 2 digits behind my decimal point. So we'll count 1, 2, and include my decimal point between the 3 and the 6. So again, we found that 72% of $130 is $93.60. So that is the second method that we just used. And again, in our first method, we multiplied our numbers out first. In our second method, we changed our fraction into its decimal form. And now in this third method, we're going to be simplifying our fractions. So again, we're going to begin by changing 72% back into its fraction form, multiplying that to $130. And again, if you feel comfortable, include your 1 in your denominator, but you do not have to. And now let's begin simplifying our fractions. So I'm going to begin by dividing 10 into both 100 and 130. 10 divides into 100 10 times, and 130 divided by 10 will equal to 13. So we now have 72 tenths. That is being multiplied to our $13. And I can also reduce both 72 and 10 since both of these numbers are even numbers. I'll divide both of these numbers by 2. So 10 divided by 2 will give us 5. And when we cut 72 in half, this will equal to 36. So we have 36/5 times $13. And as you notice, I did each of my simplification in a separate line. That's because I wanted you to be able to follow the steps that I use as I reduce my fraction. But please remember that as you get better with simplifying your fractions, you will not have to write each of these on a separate line, but rather you can do all of your simplifying right in your first step where you wrote out your fraction question. But again, this is just to help you be able to follow the steps that I'm using as I am reducing my fractions. So now that I have reduced my fraction to its simplest form and I'm not able to simplify any further, that means that I'm now going to have to multiply 36 times 13. 3 times 6 is 18. Put my 8, carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 1 will give us 10. We add in our 0. Multiplied 1 times 6, which would be 6. 1 times 3, which would be 3. And sum our digits together. 8 plus 0 was 8. 0 plus 6 is 6. 1 plus 3 is equal to 4. So we now have $468 being divided by 5. And we're going to set up our long division, dividing 5 into 468. 5 can't divide into 4 since it is smaller than 5. 5 divides into 46. 9 times 5 is 45. 46 subtract 45 leaves us with 1. We're going to bring down our 8, changing 1 into 18. 5 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. 18 subtracts 15 leaves us with 3. We're going to add in our decimal points, add our 0, remembering that we have an infinity amount of zeros behind our decimal point. So 5 goes into 36 times. 5 times 6 is 30, and 30 subtract 30 is 0. And remember again that we're dealing with money, so 93.6 is actually $93.60. Okay, so there you have it. That is our third method that we use to simplify our fractions. In our first method, we multiplied first by multiplying out our numbers. In our second numbers, we changed our fraction 7200ths into its decimal form. And then in our final method, we just simplified our fraction to its simplest form and then multiplied our numbers out. Remembering that as you get better with simplifying your fraction, you do not have to write them in separate steps, but rather you can just simplify everything right in your first step of your fractions. But the best way for you to remember this information is to practice. Remember that we do provide you with worksheets in the description box below. So click the link, go to the worksheet, and practice questions just like the ones we did today, using each of the different methods so that you can get better and stronger in practicing these steps. And until next time, this is Jules Math Tools, where math is made easy.